natural food. We've got to get back to feeding kids real food. And Bill Gates, who owns more farmland than any other person in the world.
Wow.
Won't say why. Saying that the answer is growing meat in a lab instead of empowering our American ranchers, to be successful, doesn't really pass the sniff test.
All right, guys, got Calley memes here. We're at AmFest. You speak it?
Yes.
Nice.
It's all blurring together. Yeah, I had a great chat with Vani Hari,
Nice.
Food Babe, and Paul Saladino.
Yeah, her petition was phenomenal. And Paul's doing amazing things.
You're talking to Vani, or have?
No, I haven't met her yet.
Oh, you got to get on her.
Yeah.
She's great.
I'd love to.
She's great. She's a warrior.
Yeah, that was the biggest food signature I've ever seen. Over 300,000 signatures against Kellogg's.
Yeah, she got. It's at 450,000 right now.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, moms are waking up. I think there's a real political movement here with Maha. You never think you'd have Food Babe talking about food chemicals at a conservative conference. This would have been a left-wing thing 5 years ago, but politics is changing, and it's a good thing.
When you originally got with RFK on the Maha movement, how aware was he about all these issues?
Oh, RFK's been a warrior on this for 20 years. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, he was considered these were considered fringe issues, talking about childhood chronic disease, talking about the chemicals in our food, talking about fluoride in the water, which, by the way, European countries don't have. Japan doesn't have.
Wow.
Talking about, just talking about these root cause issues, sleep, sunlight, exercise, these basic things. He's been on the warpath. I mean, he said so eloquently when he endorsed Trump that he's been praying for 19 years that these issues would be at the top of the national agenda, and President Trump answered his prayers. So I feel like you've had Bobby and all these warriors kind of on the alternative health space. It's not alternative anymore. And finally we've caught up to what he's been saying for 20 years.
How do you feel about this lab-grown meat movement? You got guys like Bill Gates advocating for it. Like, it seems weird to me, right?
Absolutely. I mean, part of me is like, let the free market reign. But the other part of me is like, we've got a serious problem with our food in the country. It's a national security issue. I mean, we've talked about it, right? But 77% of kids not being eligible to join the military because of their weight and because of their metabolic health. So I think we've really got, and talked about in this campaign, it's like, we got to empower farmers.
Yeah.
We got to get back to natural food. We've got to get back to feeding kids real food. And Bill Gates, who owns more farmland than any other person in the world.
Wow.
Won't say why. Saying that the answer is growing meat in a lab instead of empowering our American ranchers, to be successful, doesn't really pass the sniff test.
Might be a correlation there with the farmland.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
None of it makes sense, and they're not being very transparent about it.
Yeah.
The two biggest owners of farmland in the United States are Bill Gates and the CCP. Literally, China is buying up farmland all over the country. You look at a graph, and all the farmland is around military bases. So there's a huge stranglehold from the CCP on our food supply. So that's something I think President Trump's going to be looking very closely at.
Yeah. Well, they're all about different types of warfare over there. It's not just physical warfare.
Well, RFK said it on a Trump rally one time, that if a foreign government did what the processed food industry is doing to our country, it'd be an act of war. I mean, 38% of teens now pre-diabetic, 20% having fatty liver disease, the obesity crisis. I mean, the obesity rate in Japan for kids is 3%. And here, 50% of teens are overweight or obese. So
holy crap.
There's something really problematic, and this transcends politics. This is just a national security. I think it's a spiritual issue, because kids are they're losing touch with their bodies. I mean, they're losing their mental health it's tied to. So it's a big issue.
I mean, when your body's not healthy, you can't be spiritually healthy.
It does become spiritual. There's passages in the Bible. Our body is meant to enable us to connect with God. And, this is what Casey and I talk about in Good Energy. At the root cause, it's our cells malfunctioning. I mean, even obesity is our cells getting too much glucose that our mitochondria can't handle it. It's kicking it out. And that excess sugar is turning into fat.
Yeah.
That's just one visible sign of this underlying crisis that's happening in average kid's body that's going to their brain. I mean, 40% of teens are on a pharmaceutical product. And, you hear this, I'm sure, all the time. Like, it's not right what's happening with kids and their mental health. Suicide is the second leading cause of childhood death.
Wow.
So there's a real issue there. I also think Again, these are weird things to be talking about.
Shout out to today's sponsor, Prolon. If starting the year with a fast feels a little daunting, you're not alone. There's an entire community of individuals wanting to make a meaningful decision in their health, just like you. This is what makes group fasting so powerful and why I'm joining in on Prolon's January Longevity Challenge, which is a coach-led program to set you up for fasting success. Prolon's fasting mimicking diet is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. I got all 5 boxes here and I'm starting day 1 tomorrow. It's researched and developed for decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by leading US medical centers. It helps promote healthy blood sugar, enhanced skin appearance, fat loss, and improved energy and focus. It all starts with their 5-day program, which contains snacks, soups, and beverages designed to keep the body in a fasting state. No guesswork or planning required, which is a relief after a busy holiday. If you guys are ready to make 2025 your healthiest year yet, order your Prolon 5-day kit at prolonlife.com/DSH. And they're offering Digital Social Hour listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Use the code DSH at prolonlife.com/DSH.
Republican or conservative conference, but I think we've lost touch with the cycles of the earth and our farmland. It's like, a tomato in the United States is 70% less nutrient dense than it was 50 years ago.
Whoa.
Because our soil is so depleted. So by kind of this industrial agriculture, Bill Gates process agriculture system, we're depleting our soil, which gives us the nutrients, which translates everything in the world, into the food. So yeah, I think there is a deeper thing here. I think in a weird way, and I've said this, I wasn't a Trump fan in 2016. I thought he was a big threat.
Yeah.
I believe him winning with the support of people like RFK was the most important, moment potentially of my lifetime. I mean, I think this was a massive historical necessity that Trump had to win. And I think in a weird way, he's restoring our spirits back in this country. We're thinking big again. I mean, we've had a dark 10 years of misinformation, police, and the inability to question, the established dogmas. Why the hell are parents, crucified for questioning pharmaceutical products or questioning the existing standard of care when that's only led to kids being more sick?
Yep. You got the IRS stating food is not medicine.
Right.
You got health insurance prices absurd. I pay $850 a month. Most families cannot afford that.
Oh, it's crazy. It's the number one cause of bankruptcy. And it's interesting. The insurance, people say should be incentivized for us to be healthy. It's actually not. Do you know about this? The 15% medical loss ratio. So Obamacare made it that insurance companies can only make 15% profits. They have to pay out 85%. It was this populist thing that, the profits are too high. We're capping your profits at 15%. But it made it that you can raise premiums so they can get that 50%. So you just think about it. They didn't even realize this. If you are mandated 15% profit margin, but can raise prices in order to get that 50%, the incentive is for costs to keep going up. So in the past 10 years, insurance premiums have doubled, because they have this incentive for the pie to be grown. They want 15% of a larger and larger and larger pie.
Yeah.
So there's actually a strong incentive for an insurance company to want you sick. They actually want a bunch of interventions. They actually want you on a bunch of pills. They actually want a bunch of surgeries, because as costs go up, they're able to take more and more and more 15%. So literally every single lever that touches our health actually wants you sick.
That's so crazy. Yeah, it's nuts, man. I mean, what happened to United Healthcare was insane.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's very dark and I think terrible and very scary how there's any support of that. And that guy is a total psychopath and it's terrible. But I feel like there's this undefined, hard to put your finger on rage that every American person right now feels towards the healthcare system.
Right.
I think Bobby and Trump tapped into the positive vein of that. They said, listen, your kids are sick. You should be frustrated. But there's a positive place we can go. There's a positive way where the U.S. government can look at every single institution of health and say, how do we incentivize you to want kids to be healthy, not sick? This Maha agenda, to me, is a platform of incredible optimism. It's a platform where we have deregulation at the FDA to let all these startups, and there's so many interesting startups you probably talk to that are trying to do innovative blood testing, innovative therapeutics. It costs $2 billion to get to the FDA process. That's by design for big pharma. Yeah, and that's just big pharma protecting innovation. The FDA should be massively deregulated. I don't think RFK and Trump are declaring war on pharma at all. They're declaring war on big pharma, small pharma, interesting therapeutics, blood testing, preventative scans, AI-enabled tools, which the Biden administration has just not allowed anything. We should all be having a doctor in our pocket that's tied to our blood test, that's giving personalized preventative ideas.
Yeah.
There's this world of abundance. And then when it comes to CMS, Dr. Oz, this boring department, but it's the biggest department in government. It basically steers 20% of the U.S. economy, all these medical codes. Right now, it's a sick care codes. It's like on Medicare, you have to wait to get sick and then you get a bunch of drugs. Yeah. That's the way the system works. We could unbundle and allow people to have freedom. And then when it comes to the NIH, and this is huge, Jay Bhattacharya, the guy that was blacklisted on Twitter, the guy that Stanford tried to fire, he's now running the NIH. I don't know if you remember this. He was talking 4 years about school lockdowns. He was saying it was a bad idea, and he was ostracized. He's now running the NIH, and they're just going to ask, what's making people sick? How do we get back to real science? So I think you're going to actually just attack these institutions to change the dynamics with our insurance and with our pharma, with our hospitals very quickly.
Do you think the biggest reason for the sickness is the ultra-processed foods?
Yeah, so I don't like stack ranking. I think here's what's happening. 92% of medical spending is on chronic disease. 92% of deaths are chronic conditions. So these are obesity, heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver disease, Alzheimer's.
Yep.
The problem is the medical system treats these as all separate conditions. If you have those conditions, you're at a different doctor with a different pill every time. The foundational thing that Bobby Kennedy and President Trump are saying is these conditions are interrelated, and they're interrelated by simple things like food. Food's a huge problem, but it's also sedentary lifestyle. Right now, a child in a school, public school in the United States, gets less time outside than a maximum security prison, okay? There's no time for kids to play. They're sitting at desks for 8 hours. They're not getting moving. They're not out in the sun, which is extremely important. We get 2 hours less sleep than we did just 100 years ago. We have chronic stress. The fact that we have, phone, just basically lighting up our stress receptors every single second, it's a problem. Now, Trump's not saying to ban phones. He's not saying to ban artificial light. He's not saying to ban Coca-Cola. But we should be aware of this, and we should be looking at this holistic set of factors that are assaulting our children and ourselves, and look at the $4.5 trillion we spend in medicine and say, how can we ameliorate these problems? The core message that I'm pushing with my sister and that President Trump and Bobby talked about is chronic disease is interconnected.
Yeah.
So it gets to that spiritual awakening. How can we talk and incentivize with our kids and talk to them about more exercise, eating real food, looking at the sun, not being chronically addicted to their phones all day? Like, these aren't things we should be mandating top down, but they are things we can incentivize. Right now, SNAP, right? These food stamps, 18% of SNAP goes to soda. Like, we're shoving this stuff into our child's hands, right? We're incentivizing and recommending all the wrong things. To this day, as we stand here today, the USDA recommends added sugar to 2-year-olds. The American Medical Association, which sets the standard of care for our system, says that gender-affirming care for 2-year-olds is okay and encouraged.
Yeah.
Literally, you can't even make this up. Just every single aspect of our medical system is declaring war on kids. And you just have to say, enough. How can the codes incentivize the right thing for kids?
Right.
And I don't think Americans are trying to kill themselves. I don't think American children, and American parents want to live 10 years less than the Japanese or our friends in Switzerland, but they are.
Right.
We're living 10 years less. It's our very corrupt captured system that there's focus on.
Yeah, that's 3,600 days less.
It's a lot. I mean, that's like over 10% of your lifespan.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a huge, huge deal.
And then you got health span too is probably going down.
No, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The fact that we live 10 years less than someone in Switzerland is the top of the iceberg of a much larger issue that we're suffering along the way.
Right.
We've got, and that's leading to that cancer death or the suicide death because we're so depressed because of all these issues, or the heart disease death, or the diabetes-related death, or the Alzheimer's-related death. You have multiple comorbidities leading up to that. That's the big problem. The small things equal the big thing.
Right.
So everyone that has Alzheimer's inevitably had diabetes. They inevitably had some depression. They inevitably had some fertility issues, which is highly related to diabetes. They inevitably had fatty liver disease. They inevitably had, all these other issues. So we're not only living much less than our European countries, we have much more tortured lives.
Yeah.
And it's a real human capital crisis.
Yeah, there needs to be a mindset shift, right? More preventative.
That's right.
I just took a Prenuvo scan.
What do you think?
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm able to identify these things that are early because I'm 27 and I'm like, oh wow, if I waited on that, that could have been something bad.
You found some stuff?
There's some stuff, you know? And they said a lot of people that happens to.
So right now, the FDA says not to do Pronova scans.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a war right now of the current medical system against any type of early detection diagnosis. They have said not to use continuous glucose monitors to understand your glucose. They warn against blood testing that's more than just the standard blood test you get at the doctors. They actually have a essentially standing order against preventative cancer screening.
Wow.
It makes no sense. One thing that Marty McCary has talked about, who's going to lead the FDA, has absolutely reversed the FDA's war on early detection. There's this assumption in the healthcare system that the American patient is too dumb to have that data from an early scan. They're too dumb to understand their blood test. They're too dumb to have, biowearable devices that give us insight. That's so wrong, right? You probably see this. Being empowered with information helps you be healthier. Getting intense functional medicine blood testing. I found I was low grade, had an autoimmune condition, was able to attack that. It was very good to know. It helped me change my diet. Getting your Pronova scan helps you understand what's going on, take action on that.
Yeah.
Getting all these biosensors, understanding your sleep, it helps close that loop. So I think one tangible thing that the Trump administration is going to unleash is let's let Americans have their access to their healthcare data. Right now, in 20 states, patients aren't even legally allowed to have their medical records. There's this assumption from the medical system that patients are too dumb to understand their own health information. That needs to end.
That needs to stop.
Yeah.
The fertility issues hits deep with me. Almost every female friend I have has had a miscarriage. Isn't that crazy?
Miscarriages are skyrocketing right now.
It's nuts.
They're skyrocketing.
Almost every single friend of mine.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
20
That's
people.
not normal.
No. But the media is treating it as normal,
They are. They are.
But in your generation, that probably was not happening as much.
No, you probably have friends, many women with PCOS, with infertility issues. That's skyrocketed. That's doubled in 10 years. That's the leading cause of infertility. Male sperm counts plummeting. I mean, really, it's pretty dark. I mean, let's get out of motivations. There's a dark situation happening where our bodies are crying out for help on our core evolutionary function. I mean, what lesson does it send? What warning does it send that we're losing the ability to reproduce? Birth rates are plummeting in the United States. Whether it's miscarriages going up, PCOS going up, gestational diabetes, birth issues, everything that impacts a child or fertility is going up. There's an absolute war on moms. Once the kid's born, it's even more of a problem. Right now, the biggest funder of the American Academy of Pediatrics is Abbott, which is the maker of formula. There's actually studies coming out from Bill Gates essentially suggesting that lab-grown baby formula is better than breast milk.
What?
There's a war on breast milk. There's a war on what a children should be eating. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends processed food as the first thing a child should be fed. I mean, it is really, really tough out there. I don't know if you know Alex Clark, who's part of Turning Point, who's just a warrior on this issue, but we went to the Senate together and she let out a rallying cry for the American mom. The American mom, from conception to the birth of the child to the life of that child, is getting absolutely crushed by our systems.
Well, the whole process of a hospital birth is pretty traumatizing.
100%.
I'm considering home birth right now.
Well, I as you know, I grew up as a young conservative in DC. I would have never been expected to talk about raw milk and home births, but we had a home birth.
Oh yeah, nice.
And it was magical. I think, listen, women should do whatever the hell they want, obviously, when it comes to bringing their child in the world. But I don't think women are getting informed consent right now. Right now, 40% of births in the United States are from a C-section. Now, again, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. But that's a severe intervention against this miracle of life, right? This perfectly designed system to bring a human into this world.
Yeah.
My wife talked very eloquently about how it was one of the most empowering experiences of her life, to be able to do this by herself, unmedicated, obviously with medical care there. I will say, giving birth, 100 years ago was the most dangerous thing a human could do. I think for emergency issues, it is nice to have a doctor at least available. But for the vast majority of women, it's perfectly appropriate to have a natural birth. I think a very empowering experience, very important bond with the child. And it truly is the most miraculous process that a human being of any gender will do, right?
Beautiful.
Bringing that life in the world. I think the fact that we've medicalized birth is a huge spiritual problem. It's really disempowered women too.
Yeah.
I think if a lot of women knew the complications with C-sections, knew the importance for the microbiome of giving a natural birth, knew the risk for the baby, and the fact that we have the highest early childhood death in the developed world because of all our interventions. I think if women had informed consent, they'd be making different decisions. A lot of them would.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You also got the pain injection some women get.
Right.
I forget what it's called, but
Yeah. And the problem is it's like many things in medicine. The doctors are on their schedule. They're like, okay, let's give you some Pitocin because that's going to induce, quicker. And then that often has complications and leads to, a risky birth. So let's do a C-section. Then the C-section leads to an infection. I mean, you probably see this. So many women now have horror stories about birth. It's a traumatic experience. And that's because the first intervention often leads to other cascading interventions.
Yep.
Ideally, we want to bias towards what a natural process is. We want to have medical care there in an emergency. If there is an infection, we should have antibiotics. But we want to bias towards as little interventions as possible.
yeah, you got a woman fearful of giving birth these days.
Oh yeah, it's very disempowering.
Yeah. And at the current rate, we're going to depopulate, Elon talks about this.
Elon's absolutely right. I mean, there's a war on our birth rate. Every public policy that we have is anti-child, anti-family.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of this health discussion goes to an attack on the family. I mean, we are losing respect for our kids and respect for the miracle of life.
Another thing I want to see improve is the school lunch programs. I grew up in a middle upper class town, and you would think there would be decent lunch there. It was not decent. It was French fries. It was fried food. It was the worst quality meat you could find. It was leftover Domino's. It was terrible.
I mean, this is another example of just how we're really just letting down kids. I don't like to give Europe or other countries that much credit, but in France, they have a bipartisan consensus, and it's extremely important what children eat at daycare. There's actually a 4-course meal, including a cheese course at the end. I don't know if they give a cigarette or a glass of wine, but it's grass-fed cheese. It's fruit. It's a balanced meal. It's like very serious how they do it. It's very looked at how high quality that food is. Here we're giving kids ultra processed crap.
Yeah.
I was at a event for my alma mater, Stanford, this summer thing, and they had daycare. And ostensibly they're supposed to be smart people. They had the students providing the daycare, and they were giving them graham crackers and Oreos.
Wow.
To 2-year-olds. And I'm like, this is what's happening at a Stanford event. I mean, it's just crazy. We've completely lost our minds.
Yeah.
And I do think, again, I'm a conservative. I don't think there should be a nanny state, but the fact that we recommend this ultra-processed crap to kids is actually a reverse nanny state. It's a corruption of the system. It's not nanny state to say that we should have correct school lunch guidelines. That's actually the correction of corruption that we've already seen. I say this a lot. Michelle Obama early on was right, but I don't think it should be the first lady saying this. It should be the president. It should be the Secretary of Defense, because we're becoming non-competitive as a country from a military readiness standpoint. It should be the Secretary of the Treasury, because poisoning our kids is going to bankrupt our country in healthcare costs, right? It should be all the major cabinet secretaries, because this impacts everything.
Yep.
So Michelle Obama actually caved in a year because she got a lot of pressure for big food, just focus on exercise. We need a full court press that we need to have real food for kids.
Yeah. Shout out to her, even though, obviously we're not liberal.
She caved, but she was right on that.
Yeah, she was right on that.
She was right on that. We should actually listen to her, what she said in the first year.
Yeah. I grew up eating Lunchables. They got exposed for having heavy metals and all sorts of stuff. Glyphosate.
Well, Lunchables is considered a health food according to this current school lunch guideline.
Crazy.
There's hundreds of millions of dollars that go to Lunchables of federal funds a year. Just like right now, well over $10 billion of federal funds from food stamps go to soda.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that goes directly to the soda companies?
Over $10 billion from the U.S. Treasury each year goes to soda companies just from SNAP.
Oh my gosh. What do you think the alternative is to food stamps, though? Because these families still got to eat, right?
I think my personal opinion is we should have a supplemental nutrition. It's SNAP, supplemental nutrition program for our neediest Americans. Every developed country has some kind of supplemental nutrition. We should not have people starving. Yep. What do I think about SNAP? I think that it shouldn't go to soda and Hostess cupcakes, which it does right now.
Yeah.
No other country has a supplemental nutrition program going to this ultra-processed crap. 60 to 70% of all SNAP goes to ultra-processed food. So you actually had Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a very conservative governor of Arkansas, recently request for RFK and Bobby Kennedy to enable her to do a pilot program in Arkansas where they actually take junk food and soda off of SNAP. States can actually ask the federal government to have a unique structure where they have healthier food on SNAP. The Biden administration up till now has rejected. They've literally rejected state requests to take soda off of SNAP.
Wow.
So we're actually getting governors together right now who are ready to ask for that. And the Trump administration looks like they're going to grant those requests.
Nice.
So that's my answer to SNAP. SNAP should go to whole food. I want to be clear. I'm a libertarian. I think most drugs should be legal. I don't think Coke should be banned. I don't think cigarettes should be banned. But we shouldn't be subsidizing them with government money.
Right. I love that. Calley, I can't wait to see what you, Bobby, and the rest of Maha do. Where can people get your book and keep up with you, man?
Yeah, Good Energy really lays this out. I mean, it was really grateful to see the resonance this year. The Trump campaign was reported was using this as an inspiration for policy. So really grateful for that. But Good Energy is available everywhere on the socials at Calley Means. And grateful for you for shining a light on these issues, man. I think independent media has been a massive force of this Maha movement. I think we've got a big opportunity. People of every party, I think, should be supporting Bobby and Trump with this mandate from President Trump to protect kids.
Absolutely. I love it. Thanks for coming on again.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys. Yeah.